Namaskar, Dr. K Tiwari here on your favorite platform, the new Lyceum for English Literature. And in the series of literary criticism, today I am going to have a talk. I am going to deliver a talk on Roland Barthes and his theory on post-structuralism. Roland Barthes was basically a philosopher, a linguist, a sematician, and he was a French philosopher, French thinker, and one of the most influential philosophers of the 20th century. He was a linguist basically, and he gave his theory in context of language. He divided the texts between readerly texts and writerly texts. He talked about the death of the author, he talked about the birth of the author, and he talked about from work to text. How can a work become a text? And who are those people who prevent a work from becoming a text? Right? And then he talked about a few quotes. With the help of those quotes, you could understand, you could comprehend the meaning. And Roland Barthes is a very important critic, right? Very important theoretician for your examination as well. So pay your attention, and I am going to start the talk on Roland Barthes. But before I start his criticism, his critical works, let's see a few points about Roland Barthes. This is the picture here on your screen. He is Roland Barthes. He was born in France and died in France. That's why he is known as a French philosopher. He was contemporary to Jacques Derrida. Jacques Derrida was also a French philosopher and was a post-structuralist. And Derrida is known for his deconstruction theory. And Roland Barthes was born in 1915 and he died in 1980 at the age of 66. French philosopher, social theorist, and semiotician. Semiotic means the study of science. The study of science is called semiotic. And Roland Barthes was basically a semiotician, right? And he was a committed Sunday painter. Means painting was his hobby, and there was a school in France, right? And he wrote a few articles on painting, on art, but he is not known for his painting. He is known for his word painting. He is known for his critical opinions. He is known for his critical views, right? He wrote not 1, 2, 3, but he wrote umpteen number of texts, wrote several texts, and here I have given only a few texts, the names of a few texts that are important from your examinations point of view. Writing degree 0, mythologies, the fashion system, death of the author, S/Z, the pleasure of the text, a lover's discourse. Barthes wrote The Last Happy Writer, Empire of Science, and the structural analysis of narrative. These are only few texts, not all the texts that are mentioned here. And the most important text that you have to learn, you have to go through, the death of the author, number 1, SZ, number 2, pleasure of the text, number 3, right? These are number 4, the structural analysis of narrative. These are the texts directly related to your topic. Initially, or you could say basically, Roland Barthes was a follower of Ferdinand de Saussure. He was a structuralist, but he went a step ahead. And from structuralism he came to the post-structuralism. What is post-structuralism? Point number 1, post-structuralism is the continuation of structuralism. Post-structuralism is the continuation of post-structuralism. And point number 2, post-structuralism is a clear-cut departure from structural theorists. Right, from structural theory, it is a departure. It is a departing movement, and Roland Barthes was the link between structuralism and post-structuralism. He started his career as a structuralist and ended his career as a post-structuralist. And the most important essay that he wrote and that talked about his theory, right, that was the death of the author. Most important, one of the most important essays, death of the author. And in the death of the author, he negates the authority of the writer. Writer is not an authority. Writer is not an authority means writer cannot decide the meaning of the work that he has written, and the death of the author means the birth of the reader. Death of the author means birth of the reader, right? From the traditional view that meaning resides, meaning lies in the head, in the intention of the author. Roland Barthes says that no, meaning doesn't lie in author, meaning doesn't lie in boss, but meaning lies in the mind of the audience, meaning lies in the mind of the reader. It is the reader who deciphers the meaning, who decodes the text written by the writer. As soon as the text is over, as soon as he completed the work, the writer completed the work, now he doesn't have any say in interpretation, right? In interpretation, interpretation is totally the readers. This is the death of the author, right? And here in the essay, he divides texts into two parts. One is religious text, sacred text, the voice of God, and the another one is fiction, novel, poem, prose. According to Roland Barthes, they are tissues of quotations, right? There is no originality according to Roland Barthes. No writer is original, and Roland Barthes says that in fact there is no writer, in fact there is no author, and author is a copyist. He copies from several previous texts. He copies from several previous texts. He borrows quotations from several texts, and those quotations are put together. So how could you say that they are original? They are not original at all. And here you are reminded of Julia Kristeva's theory of intertextuality. Julia Kristeva says that a text is made of several texts. Here you are reminded of Mikhail Bakhtin's theory of heteroglossia. A text is made of many voices, a text is made of several voices. This was the opinion of Mikhail Bakhtin, and on Mikhail Bakhtin's theory of heteroglossia, Julia Kristeva developed intertextuality. Julia Kristeva is another post-structuralist. Roland Barthes is also post-structuralist, and he said first that there is no concept of writer, there is no concept of author, and author is not the authority of the text, it is the reader. So from the writer to the reader, this is the journey. This is the journey of death of the author. I have mentioned here of quotations from the text, and those quotations are very, very important from your examinations point of view and from your understandings point of view as well. You have to understand things in detail if you want to understand the theory in detail. First, challenging the idea that he challenged the idea. Which idea? He challenged the idea that what the artist said about their art was the definitive word on its meaning. He proposed rather that the individual viewer should be regarded as the author of the text. It is the reader who is in fact writer. It is the reader who is in fact writer. Writer doesn't write, he compiles. He compiles the quotations, and it is the reader who defines the text, who understands, who interprets the meaning of the text. Right? The traditional view was that author or artist, whatever they said, that is the definitive word on its meaning. Roland Barthes proposed that the individual viewer should be regarded as the author of the text and that it is he or she who brings their own legitimate meaning to the texts. It gave rise to the idea of many credible truths. If author is the writer, if meaning resides in the author, then author is one. So there will be only one meaning, there will be only singular meaning. And if meaning reside in a reader, then you have umpteen number of readers, you have a number of readers, and then it means you have number of interpretations, right? Number of interpretations, plural, over one truth, singular, and ushered in a period of critical analysis called post-structuralism, right? Post-structuralism believes in plurality rather than in singularity. That's why Roland Barthes clearly discarded the presence of the author, right? There is no author at all. There is only reader, and reader has the power to decode the text. All right. The death of the author is a symbolic statement about the death of the author of all stable fixed meaning. There is no stable meaning, there is no fixed meaning. Stable meaning, fixed meaning जो है वो क्या है, वो religious text की है. But when you study a fictional work, there is no singularity. There are plurality of meanings. There are various interpretations of a text. The essay was written in 1967. The death of the author. This is the reader. This is the reader, and he has involved himself into the text, right? He has the power. Now he can decipher, and he deciphers. Meaning lies inside the head of the reader, not the author. He has the power to decode the text, and he is decoding. The reader is the space on which all quotations that make up a writing are inscribed without any of them being lost. A text's unity lies not in its origin but in its destination, right? A text's unity lies not in its origin but in fact in its destination. Writing, he boldly proclaims, is the destruction of every vice. Writing is the destruction of every vice. If you want to destroy the voice, then you write. Right? You write means you want to destroy every voice. Far from being a positive or creative force, writing is in fact a negative, a void where we cannot know with any certainty who is speaking or writing. We don't have any clue to understand who is the speaker, who is the writer. Writing is negative, it's not positive, according to Roland Barthes. Right? Writing is the destruction of every voice. It is not the modification, it is not the preservation of voice as generally people think. Whatever we think, we write. Roland Barthes thinks that writing destroys the voice, right? Writing destroys the very voice. Writing is negative, as we cannot know for sure who is the writer or who is the speaker. Means Roland Barthes is against writing, right? Roland Barthes is against writing, and he boldly proclaims that writing is the destruction of every voice, right? Next point. Now, the two texts, a religious text, a sacred text, that is here Bhagavad Gita, and then literary text, that is here Salman Rushdie's most famous novel, Midnight Children. Instead, we should think of not the author, because author is dead, but the scriptor. Roland Barthes used the term scripture in his original essay, and it means copyist. Who is the writer? There is no writer, there is no author. In fact, according to Roland Barthes, there is scripture, and scripture means copyist. We shouldn't view a work of literature as a kind of secular version of a sacred text. Literature is not a secular version of secular text where the author is a God who has imbued the text with a single meaning. Who is the author of this book? This book is the voice of God. This book is the voice of God. It cannot be interpreted and reinterpreted. It has singular voice, and that is the voice of the God. And God is authority. God is authority here. But the writer is different from God. And in literary text, the literary text is a place where many previous works of literature blend and clash. Many previous works of literature blend and clash a host of influences and allusions and quotations. Indeed, none of them is original. Instead, the text is a tissue of quotations. A text, a literary text, is made of several quotations, made of several tissues of quotations, and hence there is no originality at all in a literary text. Right? In a literary text, there is no originality at all, and a literary text is totally different from a sacred text, from religious text, as religious text is supposedly voice of God, and an author is not equivalent to God. An author is not equivalent to God, so an author cannot fix the meaning. Post-structuralism is against any fixed meaning, against any stable meaning, and this is the death of the author. There is no stability, there is no fixity of meaning. Right? That is the death of the author. Barthes concludes the death of the author by arguing that imposing an author on a text actually limits the text. If you say that this text has been written by Salman Rushdie, and if you know that this text has been written by Salman Rushdie, then you will interpret the text in the context of Salman Rushdie. Where was he born? Where was he educated? What was his environment? Who was his teacher? Who inspired him most? Means biographical criticism, geographical criticism, political criticism. You will employ all these things in the interpretation of the text. But if you do not know who the writer is, if you do not know who the writer is, it means you do not know who is the boss. And once there is no bossism, you are free to interpret the text. Right? You are free to interpret the text. You are not free to interpret this text. You are not free to interpret this text, but you are free to interpret this text. Right? And the meaning of the text lies not in Salman Rushdie. He is not boss, but meaning of the text lies in the reader of the novel. Right? The death of the author argues that imposing an author on a text actually limits that text, because we have to view the literary work in relation to the author who wrote it. Its meaning must be traced back to the person who produced it, and it will be a fault, it will be a blunder, it will be a mistake to judge a piece of literature on the basis of its writer, on the basis of its author. This is the conclusion of the essay, Death of the Author. Alright, I hope you would have understood the topic, you would have understood all the points very clearly, very significantly, and very beautifully. Right? And if you have understood, please mention in the comment, please like the channel, please share the channel so that other students could also get the benefit of this class. Now I proceed from This is the quotation from the essay. Very important quotation, and several times this quotation has been asked. We know now that a text is not a line of words releasing a single theological meaning, the message of the author or God, but a text is a multi-dimensional space. A text is a multi-dimensional space in which a variety of writings, none of them original. There is no originality in the text because the writer borrows quotations from the previous text, from the other text, so there is no originality. A text is a multi-dimensional space in which a variety of writings, none of them original, they blend and clash. Literature, by refusing to assign a secret and ultimate meaning to the text and to the world as text, liberates what may be called an anti-theological activity that is truly revolutionary, since to refuse to fix meaning is in the end to refuse God and his hypostasis, reason, science and law. What is a text? A text is a linguistic construction without any unity of meaning and is linked to multiple sources of language and culture. What is text? A text is the process of language. A text is the process of language. It is a linguistic construct without any unity of meaning. A text doesn't have any meaning. Remember the example of post-structural theory when Roland Barthes said that this is cat, right? Cat is cat because traditionally we know that it is cat. Cat might think itself a tigress, cat might think itself a woman, cat might think itself anything. The meaning is arbitrary, right? Meaning is arbitrary. There is no meaning at all. So Roland Barthes says that language, a text is a linguistic construct. A text is a linguistic construct without any unity of meaning, and it is linked to multiple sources of language. Multiple sources of language as well as culture, and in order to define, in order to reach to the meaning, Roland Barthes then talks about the 5 codes through which you could reach to the meaning, through which you could arrive at the meaning. I will discuss these points later in the lecture. And then here's another essay, from work to text. What is work and what is text? I hope you know the difference between work and text. What is work and what is text? Suppose that, what is this? Work or text? Is it a work or a text? Or is it a work or a text? What it is? What it is? This is a work, right? This is the work, and this is also a work, not text, right? Text is not physical, but a work is physical. You can hold a work in your hand. You can visualize a work by your eyes. But text is something different. You cannot visualize the text. What is text? Text is a linguistic construct, right? As he told in the previous essay, Death of the Author, text is a linguistic construct and work is a physical object. Work is a physical object, and Mr. Roland Barthes says that you do not read a work, instead you should read a text. Right? A work is a physical object that occupies shelf. You could put this book on your bookshelf, that is a work, and is carried in the hand. You can carry the work in your bag. You can carry the work in your hand. A text, on the other hand, is a process in language. A text, on the other hand, is a process in language. A text is experienced. A text is experienced only as an activity of production. The text is experienced only as an activity of production. In addition, Barthes sees the author as the controlling authority that prevents a work from becoming a text. Barthes says that a writer is a controlling authority. He controls the meaning, he governs the meaning, and once author is the authority, writer is the boss, then the work will remain a work. It cannot become a text. A work becomes a text when the reader is independent to interpret the text. Right? A reader is independent. He is free to interpret a work. Then that work will be a text. And if meaning still resides in the mind of the author, it means it is not a text, it is a work. Once language starts working, we start experiencing the text. The text is experienced only as an activity of production. Barthes sees the author as the controlling authority that prevents a work from becoming a text. Long as we assume that the author carries and owns the meaning of a poem or a novel, it will remain a work and not become a text. Suppose that you read the sonnet on his blindness. Right? You read the sonnet on his blindness, and finally you say that it is an autobiographical sonnet. It is an autobiographical sonnet. It means writer holds the meaning of the sonnet. Writer holds the meaning of the work. It will remain a work. And when you do a deconstructive study of the sonnet on his blindness, then it becomes a text. Alright, I hope now it is clear. When you interpret the text, when you understand the text, when you think that whatever is written here is okay, it means you are receiving the ready-made meaning, and the ready-made meaning lies in a work, not in a text. Right? In a text, meaning is not ready-made, but reader is the creator of the meaning. That is the text. Right? And hence, Mr. Roland Barthes talks about two types of texts: readerly texts and writerly texts. What is readerly text? What is writerly text? In a readerly text, suppose that this is a newspaper, or this is a magazine, this is a book of history. Whatever facts are written here, they cannot be changed. They are not reversible. You have to stick to the fact, and in this way you will remain a passive learner. You will remain a passive reader. And if you are a passive reader, it means you are reading a readerly text. And if you are creating the meaning while reading, if you are writing the text, if you are writing the meaning at the time of reading, it means you are having a writerly text. This is the difference between readerly and writerly text. First, from work to text, and then there are two types of text: readerly text and writerly text, in the opinion of Roland Barthes. Alright, Barthes writes, the explanation of work is always sought in the man or woman who produced it, as if it were always in the end, through the more or less transparent allegory of the fiction, the voice of a single person, the author confiding in us. Alright, fine. Right, fine, then come on. This is the work. Work to text. How can a work become a text? By reading it differently. A work becomes a text when the reader refuses the authorial intervention. When the reader declares the death of the author, then a work becomes a text. Barthes' famous formulation, the birth of the reader must be at the cost of the author. The birth of the reader must be at the cost of the author, or the death of the author must be at the cost of the birth of the reader. This is chiasmus. Both are vice versa. According to Barthes, if a work becomes a text, text is always plural. Text is always plural, it cannot be singular. And once text is plural, it may have multiple interpretations, it may have various interpretations, it may have thousands of interpretations, it may have millions of interpretations, because a text is open to all. Anybody can read and anybody can interpret in his or her own way. Text is open. It is not religious work. A text is a writerly text when it is open to all for interpretation. The text is open to other texts in an endless series of intertextual operations. Endless series of intertextual operations means you cannot arrive to the meaning. What Barthes terms a tissue of quotations drawn from innumerable centers of culture. The author is dead and therefore no more the sole authority of the meaning of a text. The pleasures of text lie in the process of playing the narrative. Why should we read a text? We get pleasure. And Roland Barthes says that there are two types of pleasures, pleasure and jouissance. Pleasure is normal pleasure, that is worldly pleasure, and jouissance is something above the pleasure, that is the climax of a pleasure. And these 2 points, pleasure and jouissance, were discussed in his essay Pleasure of the Text. Right? 2 types of text, readerly text and writerly text. I hope you would have understood the point. Text is held in language, work is held in hand. Work is held in hand, a text is held in language. The text is the methodological field. The text is the methodological field. These 2 quotations are from work to text, and writerly text and readerly text. And I hope the points are very much clear to you, the differences between readerly text and writerly text. In a readerly text, meaning is fixed and predetermined, so that the reader is a site of merely to receive information. Reader is merely receptive when the text is readerly. These texts attempt through the use of standard representations and dominant signifying practices to hide any elements that would open up the text to multiple meanings. Readerly texts support the commercialized values of the literary establishment and uphold the view of text as disposable communities. And writerly text is against the commercialization, against the commodification of the text. Right? In a writerly text, meaning is fixed, predetermined, and the reader is merely a receptor. He merely receives the information. And for readerly text and writerly text, Barthes used 2 different new words, that is legible and scriptable. Legible and scriptable. Legible means readerly and scriptable means writerly. Scriptable means that could be scripted, that could be written, that is writerly. And Legible means readerly. These two types of text, readerly text and writerly text. All right. Writerly text reveal those elements that the readerly attempts to hide, उसको reveal करता है writerly. The reader now in a position of control because there is no author, there is no writer. So the reader is in control of the meaning. He is in control. He takes an active role in the construction of meaning. Meaning is not ready-made. In a readerly text, meaning is easily available, readily available to anyone, but a writerly text doesn't give you the meaning, right? The stable meaning or meta narratives of readerly text is replaced by a proliferation of meaning and a disregard of narrative structure. There is a multiplicity of cultural and other ideological indicators, and those indicators are called codes for the reader to uncover what Barthes describes as ourselves reading. Ourselves writing is a self-conscious expression aware of the discrepancy between artifice and reality. What does a readerly text do and what does a writerly text do? A readerly text just gives us information. It informs us, and we are not in a position to interpret. We are not in a position to write under the meaning. But a writerly text destabilizes the meaning. A writerly text destabilizes the fixed meaning. It destabilizes the predetermined meaning. It destabilizes the intention of the author. It destabilizes the affection of the author. There is no author at all, and once there is no author, then the writerly text destabilizes the reader's expectations. The reader approaches the text from an external position of subjectivity. By turning the reader into the writer, writerly text defy the commercialization and commodification of literature. Right? Reader is now the writer. Who is more powerful, writer or reader? Who is more powerful, writer or reader? And here in fact there is no reader at all, but the person who is studying the text, he becomes a writer. He becomes a writer, and what does he write? He writes the meaning of the text. He writes the meanings of this linguistic experience. All right, that is writerly texts. Then, any confusion between readerly, writerly, and from work to text, death of the author. Then we have another book written by Roland Barthes, that is SZ. And in SZ, Roland Barthes talks about the units of meaning. How can we interpret a text? Roland Barthes physically interprets a novella by Balzac. And while interpreting the novella, he says that there could be 561 lexes. 561 lexes. Lexes means units of meaning. Units of meaning. In any text, there can be 561 units of meaning. Alright, 561 units of meanings, and these 561 units of meaning could be interpreted with the help of 5 codes. He talks about 5 codes: proeretic code, hermeneutic code, cultural code, semic code, and symbolic code. These are the 4 codes through which you could interpret a text. Priority code discusses the plot, how the story is arranged, the arrangement of the story. And hermeneutic code discusses the advancement of the story, how it happened, where did it take place, how it could be. This is the objective of hermeneutic code. And the third one is cultural code, and each of us has the same culture. Second or fourth one is semicode, that is stereotype, and fifth one is symbolic, and you are much aware of the symbolic meaning of a word, symbolic meaning of a text, symbolic meaning of a movie. Alright. Barthes proposed that we could organize the lexions into 5 main groups, all working in combination in a narrative. That is, the 5 groups or codes, as he called them, are the narrative's mode of organizing the units so that meaning is generated. In essay 1970, Barthes applies this notion in an analysis of Saracen. Saracen was the novella by Balzac, and Roland Barthes analyzes this novella, and he found out 561 units of meaning that he called lexias. And these 561 lexias could be put into 5 different codes to get the clear meaning. 5 different codes are proarietic code, hermeneutic code, cultural code, semicode, semicode also called connotative code, and symbolic code. These are the 5 codes. First, the code of action, called proarietic codes, asks the reader to find the meaning in the sequence of the events. Sequence of the events, that is plot. Second code is the code of puzzles, that is hermeneutic code, raises the question to be answered: how this happened, why this happened, where this happened. These are the questions. These raises the questions to be answered. Fourth one is cultural code. Third one is cultural code, refers to all the systems of knowledge and values invoked by a text. Fourth one is semicode or connotative code, expresses themes developed around the characters, that is stereotyped. And the fifth one is the symbolic code, refers to the theme as we generally considered it, that is the meaning of the work. This is the concept of SZ. Now I will discuss a bit more the 5 codes so that you could understand. Proarietic. This is the most visible aspect of narrative. Most visible aspect of narrative is proarietic code, and refers to the sequence in which the events of a story is unfold. It is often a temporal sequence. It is not a fixed sequence. It is often a temporal sequence, and this happened and this happened. ऐसा हुआ तो ऐसा हुआ. This is proarietic code. Second one is hermeneutic code. Hermeneutic means interpretations. What happened, how, why, by whom. These raise the questions. Third one is cultural code, and this is the code that narrative assumes we all share. Cultural codes are those elements of common knowledge that we share as a community and therefore do not require a glossary. This can be medical, literary, or even symbolic knowledge. An example would be a narrative that uses sentences like during the Raj, and during the Raj clearly explains that the writer is talking about the colonial period, writer is talking about the European rule on India, right? And I have borrowed this explanation that is here in the slide and the next slide from the book of P.K. Nair. That credit goes to him for such easy and simple elaboration. Right, third one is cultural code, and then you have the fourth one, that is semicode. Right, that is semicode. Semicode deals with the stereotypes, and it is just like the cultural one. It is just like the cultural one, right? Stereotype, a common set of stereotype that are self-descriptive and self-evident. For example, when you say a person wearing a dhoti, a kurta, or wearing a kurta or pajama and wearing a special type of hat, you just judge that this man might be a leader. That is the semicode, and then the symbolic code. What is the meaning of symbol? Right, symbol means जो है वो नहीं है, but something else that is symbol. Suppose that when you go to the theater to watch a movie and you see that all the negative actions take place during the night or in the dark. So obviously you could say that dark symbolizes, right, dark symbolizes tragedy, night symbolizes tragedy, right? This is called the symbolic code, right? So these are the 5 codes: proeretic, hermeneutic, cultural, semic and symbolic. Alright, these are the 5 codes discussed by Mr. Roland Barthes. And then the pleasure of the texts. And in the pleasure of the text, he talks about 2 types of pleasure: pleasure and jouissance. Pleasure is the normal pleasure that we receive in our daily life, and jouissance is the climax of pleasure, that is something special, that is something divine. And a readerly text always gives you jouissance, divine pleasure. A writerly text gives you divine pleasure, and a readerly text gives you just pleasure, that is simple happiness. Barthes argues that text can be read in 2 ways: text of pleasure and the text of bliss. This text of bliss is jouissance. The text of pleasure is a text that is easily consumed with a clear linear narrative and a simple straightforward meaning, that is the readerly text. The reader derives pleasure from following the story and understanding the message. And the second one, jouissance, that is the text of bliss, on the other hand, is more complex and more challenging text. It resists easy interpretations and demands that the reader engage with it on a deeper level, and that is writerly text. The reader derives pleasure from the act of reading itself, from the challenge of trying to make sense of the text, and from the creative process. Alright, so this was all about Roland Barthes and his theory of death of the author, work to text, readerly text to writerly text, bliss and pleasure, pleasure and jouissance, and what 5 quotes given by Mr. Roland Barthes for the interpretation of any text. I hope you would have enjoyed the lesson, you would have enjoyed the chapter, and all the questions based on Roland Barthes now will be answered very easily by you. Hope for the best, good luck, all the best. I'll meet you very soon with another lecture on another theories, another theory or another philosopher or thinker. Thank you, good luck, and if you have enjoyed, then please do not forget to share and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much, all the best, good luck.